Okay.
So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Nedal El-Ghattis from Arab Intactivists. Nedal, would you like to present from your slides, or would you like to start with a couple of questions, or would you prefer to leave the questions till the end?
If we leave the questions till the end, could be a better approach.
Fantastic. Yeah. Well, over to you, Nedal. We're all ears.
Thank you, Michael. Hi, everyone. It's 6 o'clock in Melbourne, and I've been awake for the whole night. I just slept for less than an hour. So I was worried that I could miss this meeting. But anyway, my presentation today is about our work in our group for the last 8 years. So the main things that I'm going to cover in this discussion is some of the primary obstacles and difficulties facing our work. Then what are the main trends that are affecting our work and how we can benefit from them. Then I will give a general overview of the things that we have done or the projects that we're trying to do within the coming few months. Now, I'll try to develop this presentation, so it could be a paper in the future. So the methodology that I'm going to use is the Future Triangle. It's a method developed by Sohail Inayatullah. He's an Australian professor, and he's focused on future studies. So this method maps 3 qualitative different dimensions of the future that will eventually arrive at the most plausible one. So if you can move to I forgot to mention to move to the 3rd slide, please. 3rd one, yeah. So the first dimension is the pull or the image of the future, what we are looking for, what we are trying to achieve, what is our dream. Then the push of the present, the drivers of the change, how we could benefit from these drivers and make it helping us to achieve our pull or the image. Then the weight or the barriers to change. So mapping a research topic along these 3 angles, future possibilities can be better understood. The whole idea started from the whole idea of the intactivism in the Arab world started, I believe, in the 50s with Professor Nedal El-Ghattis. She's an Egyptian doctor, and she suffered from the female changes in her body. They cut her, and she wrote about her story, and she started becoming an activist in regards to the female modification, then later the MGM. So, and during these years from the 50s, 60s, 70s, she faced a lot of challenge because she was by herself. But later, there are more people came to the scene and starting working on this regard till 10 years ago, where I'll discuss that later in our presentation. So our objectives in this group is to raise awareness of the harms of circumcision. And then we try to push towards criminalization of the routine circumcision practice on children. All of that will lead us to discussing traditional Islamic discourse to push for reformation. And we are using the MGM as a case study. So if there is a reformation, why is that? And we use the MGM as a case study because it is affecting you could say every single one of us. The percentage is above 99% of the population. In order to do that, we have to understand the topologies of Islamic ideology. Sorry, it's slides, I forgot mentioning the slides, it's number 6. Yeah, so we need to understand the different categories of the fabric of Islamic society. First category is the fundamentalists. They adopt aggressive version of Islam. They try to impose restrictive public observation of Islam. Sometimes they resort to violence. And they have their source, they have a radical understanding of Quran and the teaching of the Prophet, which we call it Sunnah. They have pragmatic leaders. And the second group is the traditionalists. They are support literal and strict form of Islam, but don't resort to violence. They resist modernity and change. They also have the Quran, the teaching of the Prophet, and local customs as their source, and sometimes opinions and local clerics. The third group is new traditionalists. They are willing to make some concessions, conserves the spirit of the law, focusing on optimal objective of Sharia. They also refer to the Quran and Sunnah and modern law and ethics. And those three groups are the major groups in the Arab Muslim world. They are the dominant groups. You could say more than 80% of the population, they are part of one of these groups. Our focus and our work in our group is on the other two groups, the last two groups, modernism, progressive Islam, and reformists. The interpretation and the reinterpretation of traditional Islamic scripture, the Quran, and the other texts such as the Hadith or the Sunnah or the sayings of the Prophet, the process called ijtihad. They try to do their best in order to understand the text. They seek to adopt a traditional religion to more liberal, human rights-oriented values, a more critical and diverse examination of religious texts. So they use reasoning, they refer to Quran, less emphasis on Sunnah, the teaching of the Prophet, and many of them don't believe that the Sunnah is the source. Modern law and ethics also they refer to. The last group, secularism, complete segregation, because for complete segregation between religion and the state. Secularists tend to seek ideology of promoting the secular political and social values as opposed to Islamic one. So they have modern laws and ethics as a reference. The last group, they are minority, and they don't have that strong influence in the Arab and Muslim world. So, but they, we can see that they adopt whatever we present and take it as part of, if they believe in it, they start promoting it because they find it a way to attack or attack the religion. So our main focus on the reformist and progressive Islam. Now, if we want to talk a little bit about the weight of the past and barriers to a change, what are the obstacles that facing us while we are trying to stop this kind of practice? Before that, we have to know that there is almost a consensus among Muslim scholars that the most crucial problem faced by Muslim world is in prevailing ideas, including sanctification, the common paradigm, the absence of the role of intellectual, which formulate people's thoughts and determine their options. There will not be a genuine renaissance of Islam without updating these ideas and emerging from the cocoon of the past. So some of these barriers, institutionalization of religion and conversion into a profession. Now we will talk a lot about the religion because main problem that faces us is not the medical side like the rest of the world, but it's the religion as we know. So the institutionalization of religion and conversion into a profession. The most dangerous thing that can happen for a religion is to be institutionalized. It becomes subject to the institution's entitlements, obligations, and relations. It becomes stagnant, killing innovation and creativity. Unfortunately, what happened in the various stages of the history of Muslims is but a transformation of the religion. Its function became a worldly political job, and so was transferred from the symbolic scope of moral spiritual, which is the normal scope, to another area where the law dominated the spirit and become a conflicting political ideology. Its lofty dimensions, spiritual and moral, all but to waste. Although there is a widespread assertion claiming that there is neither religious institution in Islam nor men representing religion as Christianity, the reality of the situation and the requirement of the embodiment of the religion in the real life contradict this assertion. In fact, Islam represents the moral capital of the nation. He who possesses Islam has the right to possess power. In every country, there is a Ministry of Religious Affairs who's taking care of all religious affairs in the country. Spokespersons in the name of religion are employees within the ministry and are financially supported by them. Fatwa, which is giving the religious edict, is restricted in many countries to specific category selected and appointed by the ruler, representing the religious orientation of the country, and any comments on or oppositions are duly silenced and fought. Therefore, a religious employee's speech is in the interest of the state that hired him. He is an ally subject to authority. Whilst Islam in its classical heyday, scholars distinguished themselves by being independent and rejected any position in the state, considering it a shortcoming in character and challenge to their credibility and independence. In our modern time, the jurisprudential academies, which issues fatwas, plural of fatwa, are only religious institutions, superficially independent. They are in fact funded and regulated by governments or traders and other stakeholders in the stakeholders. Now, the second obstacle is power and tyranny in the name of religion. In his book, Nature of Tyranny and Vanquishers of Slavery, Al-Kawakibi explains that political tyranny within Muslims is based on the religious theory, and the lying conveying scholars are the foundation of the storage of corruption in the subsequent religious concepts with their acquiescence to impartial grievances. Over centuries, for fabric and decorated texts have been attributed to the Prophet, legitimized position and obedience to the rulers. So part of the religion, which we consider as authentic, reality it was created by rulers through those scholars to legitimize certain actions. Now, third problem or barrier is sanctification of the former and imminence of the traditional mental Salafi and the tendency to imitate. In Islamic culture, a companion of Prophet Muhammad and those who were close to him are considered the finest human beings with most piety and goodness, making their actions and their words the best expression for understanding the religious text. This concept prevailed and has become entrenched over the centuries, giving selected words of their special sanctity and their reasoning final and usually not for discussion. The roughly guided Caliphate period This term is used in Sunni Islam to refer to the four first political leaders following the death of the Prophet Muhammad, become the future dream model for the most religious. In all discussions, whether in matters temporal or religious, we find the religious debater reiterating words of foreigners and dealing with them as if they were absolute truth. This position arose from the fact that the Salaf, the preserved religion and passed it on to those who came after them. What I'm trying to say that why we have to think of something already the previous people or the Salaf, they thought about it. So nothing to add for the discussion. This negativity left a serious impact on the mechanism of thinking in modern Islamic jurisprudence, which belongs to a very distant period of jurisprudence. The credibility of any modern idea is based on how much it relies on the legislation of former scholars. Any innovation must be presumed and platform based on former contributions, which affecting us in how we deal with the whole issue of circumcision, because no one talked about it before that it's not part of the religion. So it doesn't, whatever we say, it doesn't have authenticity. The third obstacle is religion wearing the garment of religious thought and authenticity of Sunnah. The Sunnah, as we said, is the teaching of the Prophet or the sayings of the Prophet. Islam is the general principle described in the Quran, whilst religious thought is how to understand this text by individuals or group of people. Everything that was written after the death of the Prophet Muhammad is a matter of religious thought. It is a human opinion and doesn't have sanctity of any kind, but with time, margin annotations and comments have become a reference higher than the reference of the founding text. There was a separation and detachment of Islamic decree from reality. For legislation, human knowledge was formed in specific culture, context across Islamic society history, which has been printed with all the problems associated with this history. With the spread of apparent religiosity among Muslim people and the accumulation of historical experiences of the religion and society, state and Islamic culture, where a large number of men, current and doctrines contributed, each according to its understanding and interpretation of the text inspired. With time, it leads to the transformation of religiosity to religion. Their understanding of religion gained the status of sacred powers, instilling and consolidating a mass of historical culture, making it binding, which contradicts the understanding of a flexible religion that is shaped and changed by the surrounding social conditions, causing chronic confrontations and tension in the social medium. Now, the fourth obstacle is the weakness and absence of the role of intellectual as a result of persecution and propensity for exploitation. There is a near enmity on the deterioration of the role of the intellectual in Muslim world. The intellectual faces, as described by some people, are a plot of silence and marginalization until the thinker is affiliated with frustration in a society that doesn't recognize creative knowledge. The result of the absence of bourgeoisie, class, and intellectuals lead to the inevitable rise of religious fundamentalism, and because of the character assassination of all personalities that merged, outside the dominant discourse, the march of intellectual change in the Muslim world slowed down, and remained in a state of degeneration, as well as a result in other problems, that is political, economic, poverty, unemployment, and corruption. So, and this, we faced it with those those activists who are trying to promote certain modern ideas and challenge the existing paradigm. We found that they face this problem: character assassination, or they throw them in the prisons. Some people that I know, some of them I contacted them about the circumcision, male circumcision, and they are not allowed even to be in official media and talk about these kind of topics. So this is a serious problem, intellectual problem. So now, if we can go to the next slide, please. So we have to rethink the unthinkable. So recently there have emerged those who call for change and renewal to rise to the requirements of the universality of the Islamic message. They call to rethink the unthinkable in Islamic thought, as called by Archon, one of the Muslim thinkers. What's it meaning to rethink and re-examine the postulates and axioms that control and affect Muslims' minds, that affect a renewal in the Islamic thought process? We should or must exercise profound constructive criticism of Islam's heritage and traditions. For constructive criticism is bound to dispel the air of sanctity, empowering tradition, subjecting it to scrutiny, to rethinking, to study like any other human endeavor without any sanctification. Now, the problem with the people that you are dealing with, next slide please, that they are within a box, they are within a jar, and they cannot see the label. Those who come out of the jar, start discussing these kind of ideas, they face the reality. They know how big is the gap between what we think is the optimal situation and the reality, and there is a huge gap between the two. Now, next slide, please. In order to make a real change, we have to go through stages. We cannot change the environment and behavior of people by just changing the law. Like 2 days ago, we were discussing about female circumcision in Egypt, even though there is a law for more than 10 years about this issue, and it's not applied. Still practiced based on the World Health Organization, female circumcision in Egypt. There are 90% of the girls still circumcised. So it's not about the law, it's about the belief and identity. So we have to go we have to go deeper level, not just to stay in the external levels. We are trying to create a new narrative, seeking crowd wisdom to flourish and to co-create. Without changing the belief, we cannot change much. So discussing the religion itself, it's a core thing, a fundamental thing that we have to do. We cannot just ignore it or say, talk nicely without kind of not attacking, but criticizing in a constructive way certain ideas. Next slide, please. Then the current situation now. We have an official Facebook group. Personally, I started 10 years ago, and I established this group 8 years ago. Before that, I was thinking about it, discussing it in my page, Facebook page. And before that, there was another 2 groups in Facebook. They closed it. They closed the group twice, and we lost the members. There were around 5,000 members there, and very many active people. But after that, they gave up. They felt that there is no hope to stay in Facebook. But I decided to continue with my my colleagues, and we established our group and become very careful in the things that we present to keep it within the Facebook standard. We have 3,500 members from different parts of the world, mainly from the Middle East. And we have 5 Arabic books written about male circumcision in Arabic. None of them got translated, except one got translated to English and French for Professor Sami Deeb. And we also have a YouTube channel where we have 15 clips and lectures. Some of these clips are translated from English, and we have dozens of good articles to share. We have more than 2 groups, other groups, just in case if they close this one, we have the other 2 still working. We just copy and paste whatever we write in the original group to them. Next slide, please. Now, so if we want to talk positively about the trends that are redefining Islamic activists, I believe the first thing is the widespread use of social media. Now this gives us a lot of space to maneuver because officially we have 1 channel before the satellite channels, 1 or 2 channels representing the government. But then we have the satellites, but we cannot express your opinion in these satellite channels. But in the social media now, you could say whatever you want hiding behind your nickname. And this gives us a lot of power to utilize, to promote the idea. Then there is also demographic and behavioral changes. What I mean by that the youth, the new generation, they are not very loyal to the old gods, to the old regimes, to the traditional scholars, which is, I find it very positive. Also, we have kind of spiritual awakening, which means it's not just about religion and practicing the religion, it's about spirituality. This will increase the space where we can sit and discuss rather than we refer to certain text or certain books. Also, the movements for women's liberation and the prevention of female circumcision. This is contributed to the discussion because they use for female circumcision and male circumcision, both they use the same sources. So if female circumcision is not okay, so it means that also male circumcision shouldn't be okay. But the scholars, they try to avoid this discussion and hide behind their understanding. Then there is also jurisprudence reviews and the push towards the Islamic Enlightenment. I can see changes in the, for example, to give an idea, I used to go to book fairs or book festivals for the last 12 years, and I can see the kinds of books that people are like to read. Before 15 years ago, it was different books, traditional Islamic books. Now it's become more to those who are calling for reformation. So it's gaining momentum and strength, this movement. Besides the medical awareness of the harms of circumcision, before we always thought it's useful, it's beneficial, and it's very healthy. But now we can read and translate and promote these papers which prove how harmful is this practice. Also, another thing is the political and social instability. Now, people lost trust in their government, they lost trust in the institutions. So now you have to find out a way for yourself in life. Now, what happened in the Middle East in the last 10 years with the Arab Springs or Arab revolutions destroyed whatever was existing before. And everyone is suffering as a result of that. Now they are looking for kind of like the light at the end of the channel. So this political and social instability, after some time, it will settle down and people start to choose for themselves, not choose by someone who has a higher authority. So the next slide please, the strongest trend is the demographic and behavioral change. The renewal of Islamic discourse is becoming an increasingly growing topic of conversion both in social media and outside of it. Yeah, so slide number, let's move to slide 16. I'm taking a lot of time, I'm sorry. I'm just finishing now within 2-3 minutes. We have the community game and the Wall Street game. Those people who are looking for money, represented by doctors, and those who are old guards, the breachers, who are trying to keep the status quo. So we have the second revolution, the Bodyguards, our groups, everyone is working together towards giving this the idea of self-determination, freedom of choice, the rights. It's above religion, I believe. It's above many things. And this is what the people in our region are looking for. And there are stages of movements towards systemic change. Next slide, please, number 17. So stage of social movements, we are after the emergence, we are in a state where we are trying to organize our work. We are trying to now establish an official organization to present this movement. And this will give us more credibility and will allow us to contact these official organizations officially and talk to them. Our focus, as we know, our focus in removing the myth. This is not Islamic. Not everyone is practicing it. It's nothing to do with the cleanliness, and it doesn't prevent diseases. So I believe the key components for success is to establish a governing rules and legal framework, and also to provide educational training, and also to promote research. We don't have any kind of research in this regard in our region, and also to engage the civil society. There are strategies we used to follow. Our strategy now is to contact the key people, those people who we feel that they could support us, either from the scholars or doctors or journalists, and ask them to talk about it, to promote the idea, invite us to talk, or present certain articles. In order to apply the strategy, so we are addressing jurists and thinkers who oppose circumcision, asking them to issue fatwas, legal opinion. Addressing the jurists of official institutions to draw their attention to our existence. Coordinating with well-known thinkers and writers and the famous Facebook pages to raise the issue on their pages or television or radio or programs, translating from English and French on topics of interest and publishing them in our group. Next stage also we translate from Arabic to English now after collecting survey for those who want to help and support us. We can now start doing that. And also preparing educational material for our website. Some of our projects, currently we are working in a website, the legal framework. We have a list of scholars now, around 6 scholars who are supporting us. We are seeking more. And list of doctors, we have more than 7 doctors supporting us. Also contacting the journalists, coordinating with the Facebook groups, requesting our friends to write translation, and planning to have, preparing to have a podcast discussing this male circumcision in Arabic. So I believe that's all, and I apologize for taking that long. I wasn't expecting it. I haven't rehearsed, so it took too long. I'm sorry. That's all. If you have any questions, I will come.